Love, music, passion, creative genius, chronic depression, success. Those who live with chronic depression are often deeply misunderstood. Recent research shows that nearly 1 in 5 of those 18 and older in the US have reported suffering from depression. Although we're making strides in the destigmatization of mental health issues, silent struggles continue behind the scenes. By having honest conversations about depression, we can pull back the curtain to create the massive change we need. Today, we'll focus on this listener's real-life question. Since my late teens, I've struggled with chronic depression. My parents ignored it. They told me it was just part of being an adolescent. But now, 20 years later, there are days I force myself to get out of bed. I've even been told to get over it, as if depression is a choice. Medication hasn't helped much. Is there anything else I can do? And with that question as the focus of today's podcast episode, I'm Dr. Carla Marie Manley, and this is Imperfect Love.
Welcome to Imperfect Love with Dr. Carla Marie Manley, psychologist, author, and relationship expert. I'm here to help unravel mysteries and misconceptions about love, relationships, and mental health issues, plus everything in between. Love is complicated, people are not perfect, and relationships surely can be tough. Together, we'll navigate this messy, imperfect space of real life.
Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Owen Dara, singer, songwriter, filmmaker, playwright, and author. Owen will be sharing his expertise on creativity, passion, and living with chronic depression. So, Owen, I am so grateful, so blessed to have you join us today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being with us on Imperfect Love.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Carla. It's really great to see you again. And that listener's question is fantastic. Some of it, of course, I have experienced and gone through similar things myself. While not exactly that, we're all somewhat different, but I can certainly relate to a lot of what was asked.
Thank you. And I love talking with you because you're so transparent. You're such a genuine, love-filled, amazing human being, and someone I've seen your films and I've read your work, in fact, your book as well. And there's something so magical about you. In fact, I've heard you sing during the pandemic, tuning into your concerts. I mean, it's just so amazing and uplifting. And here, behind all of that success and that beauty and that delight is also a lifelong struggle with chronic depression.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, one goes in hand with the other in a sense, because it really is the depression that initially pushed me towards creativity. It was a way of dealing with depression. And I think without depression, I wouldn't have that spark for the creativity or that drive to create. Because I think there comes a point if you are a creative person, and of course there are plenty of creative people who don't have chronic depression, and I'm very happy for them. and I consider myself fortunate in that I've learned to control it over the years. Certainly in my teens and my early 20s, it was extraordinarily difficult. And creativity was certainly something that helped me. And hindered me also in a way because, we're searching for, when we get depressed, we're searching for a way out. We don't really have, a lot of times we don't have the support system, or we don't have the energy to pull ourselves out, or the know-how. At least I didn't in my teens and certainly in my 20s. A lot of time I was kind of alone going through all that. And when I perform, at least back then, especially, it would give me a reprieve from it. expressing myself and being on stage and feeling the love of strangers, in an audience would actually lift me up. But then the following day, I would be maybe two steps back from my head from what I'd been the day before. It would be like, oh, in the evening I've done this. Oh my God, I feel great. I'm cured. And then the next day, I would actually find that I had taken a step back. So in a sense, it can hinder us also. I think the quiet creativity, the expression alone, and those honest feelings without particular feedback, I think that can slowly bring you out of it, or it can certainly help you to cope with it as it's going on. And I find more as I get older, and I talk to people such as you, and then I talk to people who also suffer from chronic depression. It's like we listen, we recognize each other. Somebody will say something about suffering from depression, and then I'll say something, and there'll be a little spark of like, oh, this is someone who understands.
He
They
gets
must
it.
have, yeah, they must have someone in their life who has depression that they're close to, or they must have experienced it, and then the conversation will escalate into something extremely open and just like, oh, you know about that? Oh my God, you experience that? Oh, you feel that? Absolutely. And if, sometimes people say, you must have done so much research on that. And I'm like, well, yes, the only reason I've done any reading on it, or I listen to any podcasts about it, or I take a specific interest in it is because I understand that world, and I'm grateful for the fact that I go through long periods of not being depressed, and kind of my MO in life now, I suppose, is to avoid depression. It's not that I can ever avoid it; it's going to come back, but I need to find some kind of sense of equilibrium where I don't get too high, I don't get too low. I just kind of get on with day-to-day life, do my work, and I found certain things in my life that will help me to sustain a sense of well-being.
So
Doesn't always work.
does not, and I want to dive into what works for you and
Mhm.
what doesn't work for you as a way of circling back to our listener's question. But
Mhm.
first, if you don't mind, I'd like you to share with our listeners a little bit about you and your journey in life. For example, your lovely accent. Where were
Mhm.
you born?
I was I, I was born in Cork, Ireland, and I grew up there. That's pretty much my entire childhood into adulthood. And I've just come back from there. Actually, I spent 2.5 months over there over the summer, which was fantastic.
Mm.
Great connecting with family and community there. At least most of them. I caught up with a couple of people. There was maybe people I went to school with, and I was like, yeah, there was a reason we haven't kept in touch all these decades. But it was joyous to actually connect, especially with my mother. I was able to spend a lot of time with her and with some of my siblings, nieces and nephews, some old good friends. And, I think that has helped. Connecting with
Mm.
people helps. I mean, I think that is really our essence as humans, is connectivity and sense of community, and having that, um, certainly because I went through a down period. I locked down for about 5 days in the middle of that time, just because I can feel when a depression is coming on.
Mhm.
And I don't always know 100%. And I generally am in denial about it. And I say, well, I think, yeah, I feel like I'm kind of getting depressed, but no, I think I'll be okay. And then I power through. And then it comes to a point where I go, okay, have to recognize this, have to take the steps. So what I did at that time was I isolated, which works for me. The hardest thing, I think, that I tell people this, and it's maybe hard for them to understand, is the hardest thing to deal with is people, and even people you love. The hardest thing is if you're around somebody who doesn't really understand, or who's trying to lift you out of this situation, who's trying to fix you. It the only thing that can really heal is time and taking care of yourself and going through it. And you have to go through it. I'm not saying you have to go through it by yourself, because a support group is extremely important. And what my family did, and some friends, they communicated with me every day, several times a day. They brought me meals, which was a huge help.
Yes.
And they didn't judge. They said, "Are you okay? What do you need?" Not telling me what I needed, asking,
Asking you.
yeah, and not judging, and saying, "Look, this thing is happening tomorrow. Do you want to be part of this? Would it be appropriate to include you in the invitation, or how do you feel?" And then if I text back or I say, "I'm not ready to see people," absolutely understand. Fine. And, unbeknownst to me at the time, but my sister contacted Jessica, my other half, who knows me. And, I don't want to say mood swings, because it's not that, but I suppose my ups and downs that she tends to recognize even before I do. Because I'll say, I think I'm going into a depression. And she'll say, "Yeah, I could have told you that 2 days ago," when I
Ah,
was in denial. And so, they communicated a bit and said, like, "What should we do?" Because my family, I don't usually spend extended time with my family. And what she said is, "Don't worry and leave him be." That was her advice.
brilliant.
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 Brilliant. Because we hear somebody suffering through something, we want to help them, we want to be there, we want to say, "Oh, come, I'll take you out, I'll do this, I'll do that." And so, I think what people don't understand, the majority of people, is that if someone is sad, they can be cheered up. If someone is depressed, they need to go through that in order to get out the other side of whatever this phase, because it's a phase, it's chronic, so it's going to come back. But we do get out of it. Even the most depressed of us, I believe, we get reprieve. And again, I'm certainly not a medical expert. I just know, having gone through it, that I think I understand much, much more than a number of professionals, because, I had a conversation with a very close friend of mine who's medicated for many decades now, unfortunately, 40 years since he was a teenager. And we have in-depth talks about depression, and he can tell me things that he doesn't tell some other people. And even his psychiatrist said to him one day, he said, "Look, I can't understand what you're going through because I haven't experienced it, but here's the things that we do, and here's what I've been trained to give you at this time, or to tell you to do at this time." And I never went down the path of medication. I was prescribed medication a couple of times, and I part of it is the fact that my friend, he's been so reliant on it. It's had some adverse effects on him. And also, I didn't want to be tied down to something that would be perpetual in my life, that I would continue to have health insurance. I would continue to have, doctor visits. And so I've been lucky that I've been able to control it without actually having to have medication. And I'm not saying it was the best path for me to choose. Possibly it might have been better for me to take the medication when I was prescribed it, but I take supplements. I take SAMe. I take that on a regular basis. If I'm feeling down, or I feel like I'm on my way towards it, I take SAMe every day. It was actually I don't want to say prescribed, but the information was given to me by a fellow depression sufferer who came into my life because his wife was my boss at the time. And I basically couldn't finish out a day's work. Uh, and I told her that. And rather than say, well, you have to work. I don't have somebody to replace you right now. She said, go into this room, take your time, relax. And then she called her husband, and her husband came in, and he came in and he spoke to me. And he was somebody who suffered terribly with depression. And he basically, it was one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me in my life. He kind of took charge and said, look, this is what I've been through. And so much to me was familiar. And he said, these are the things that work for me. And some of them I'd heard before and some I hadn't. But one was, I take Sammy every day, and he gave me a book basically on, and I don't know who wrote the book, if it was somebody working for the company or whatever. I don't care at this point,
Mhm.
because it worked for me and it really helped me. So I started taking it every day. Then fish oil, vitamin B, B12, and B6, multivitamins. I started eating healthier, because our brain, we can't have a healthy brain without the right
Without
foods.
the right food, yes.
And I think I had let my physical health dwindle, because I was living a life for many years of just being an entertainer, being in comedy clubs. I was a comedian for many years. And I didn't feel like I needed to keep my physical health in peak condition for that. I was able to sleep during the day and be out at night, and, have some drinks after the show or during the show or before the show. Nobody judged you if you were having a couple of drinks before you went to work, because you were on stage and you were a comedian. So it was kind of expected
It's
almost.
part of your lifestyle at
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
it was. And I think I got away with that for a number of years, but then it really caught up with me. And, I was a vegetarian since my teens. And somebody also told me, they said, look, if you start eating fish, it's going to help your mental health. And of course, I didn't want to believe that, because I'm a vegetarian and I want to stay a vegetarian. But, we're all different, all our body types, all our brain types, our minds, we're all different. And so I thought, well, why don't I try that? Because look, the most important thing is your mental health.
Yes.
At least to me at that time, most important thing was mental health. And so I started eating fish again, and I think that also helped me. It helped me physically, and I think it helped me mentally. And I now try to keep, and it's not always possible, but I now try to keep a very healthy diet that will sustain me, in a good mental place. And sometimes, the mental illness will come on me, or the symptoms of my mental illness will come on me at the most unexplained or unexpected times. It's like life is going great. I'm doing this. I'm so excited about this project I'm working on. My film's almost finished. And I get excited about working on it. And then I'll start to feel a little twinge of something, a little kind of, staring off into the distance and wistfulness for no reason, no explainable reason. I think depression is inexplicable in so many ways.
Mhm.
There's so many factors that must play into it that, of course, I don't understand. And I'm sure the general consensus is that there are many things still to be understood about this. And so I'll just find myself wondering why at this time and for what purpose. And then there it is. And then I'll just say, okay, now I have to take care of myself. And if I don't, it'll go on for a long, long time. And if I do, I can hopefully, I can hopefully not quite nip it in the bud. I'll still have to go through it, but it will not be as long lasting and not as severe if I'll catch it early and I'll do the things that I know I need to do.
If you get ahead of it,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting here. There were plentiful tears in my eyes, and my heart was getting very sad at being with you and stunned by your courage. I mean, I just can't help but be stunned by the courage that it must take to live with chronic depression, because I've never, suffered from depression. Closest I've gotten is periods when I've lost a loved one. And I know how excruciating that can be. And so for you to realize, for me to realize as I'm sitting here, that it's not triggered by a loss of a loved one, but a loss ongoing in life of this period that you're in where it's normal and lovely and wonderful. And then you feel it inexplicably encroaching and you don't have a reason for it. You can't say, oh, I lost my sister, or I lost this loved one, but it's actually this chronic, lifelong surge, it feels like. And I am just, what courage, Owen. What incredible courage. I,
Well, thank you, but I feel I have little choice. So I don't know if it's
yes.
courage if you have choice. And one of the things, and again, I'm sorry for your loss. I know you and I
Oh,
have
no, no.
discussed that before. And that is it's a horrible thing to lose a loved one. I mean, it's awful to have someone so close and um, such a big part of your life to be gone. And of course, that those feelings are inexplicable to those who have not felt that either, you know?
Yes,
Um,
but yours is lifelong. You started suffering from depression. How old were you?
well, I was somewhat of a morose child, I think. My aunt and uncle, who I saw recently, they said, "Yeah, we'd bring you to these things, and we'd say, 'Did you have a good time?' And you'd say, 'Yeah, I did,' but I wouldn't, I would never be smiling. I wonder, I don't know if he really enjoyed himself or not. And that's not something I really have much memory of. But I remember not being a particularly happy child.
Hmm.
But depression came upon me in my teens. I was maybe 17 or 18 when it hit me, and then it hit me again when I was about 19 or 20. And then it was like, okay, something very serious is going on here. And they say it's hereditary too, and my dad suffered terribly with depression. And so I'd seen that in my dad over the years, and I think at that time, at least in Ireland, it wasn't accepted really as an illness. I mean, still in some circles, it's people go, well, we all get sad. I mean, we hear that and we're just like, that's true, we all get sad.
But this is different.
It's different, and I kind of developed maybe what's akin to maybe concept checking questions with people as to, okay, do you ever want your life to end? I would say, so we all get sad, and do you want your life to end at that time? Well, yeah, maybe it crosses my mind. Okay, and how long does it last? uh X amount of time. Oh, okay. And then it stops, and then when does it come back again? How long does it take before it goes? And I ask these questions. They go, oh no, I never experienced anything like that. And I go, yeah, because it's different. Sadness and depression, they're worlds apart. And certainly there's some
Yes.
crossover, of course, but you can't tell me everyone gets sad, so everyone understands what depression is. And one of the things I didn't mention before, and I suppose this is very important, when I burn the wick at both ends, which I tend to do as an artist, because I'll get driven to finish a project and I'll love it and I'll be excited about it, and that I suppose is the other end where I lean towards the high, where the brain's working very, very fast and very well, and you're creating things that you couldn't if you were on an even keel. So I feel like the bipolar the bipolar element is certainly there too, but not to the extent that I can't control that. It's
Right.
not like I run down the street howling at the moon or whatever when that time comes, but I recognize that I'm on a kind of a high now, but I have a place to put all that in my creativity. And it's when I am the most creative. But I find that if I burn the wick on both ends like that, that will set it off. That basically is a recipe for me to go to a lower place, or for a
Mm.
dark cloud to come upon me. And so as the years have gone on, I've realized that I need to, even as much as I want to and as excited I am about creating something, I need to curb that and just put a normal day's work in, which might, be 6, 8, 10 hours or whatever, but not 15.
Not 15. So balance is key for you.
Oh my
Balance.
God, yes. And I mean, I
Yes.
went through phases of doing 15 hours a day was nothing to me, which is crazy. I mean, that's kind of crazy now that I think about it. And not just 15 hours one day. Sometimes that would go on for weeks and I wouldn't take a single day off. And I'd be very excited about it. I'd be like, oh, this is great. I wish it were always like this because I would feel so good. And again, I guess that's the higher end of the spectrum that I wish I could live in. But of course, I can't. There's always, if somebody gets drunk and they feel great, there's the hangover. And I think it's the same. If you're on that creative high and you keep it going for as long as you can because you don't want it to end, well, it will be ended for you. And then the other end of the spectrum, it's not worth it. I've discovered that it's just not worth it. And so I will consciously stop work, at 5 or 6 o'clock or whatever. Or, I have someone thankfully in my life, Jessica, who will come and she'll walk in and go, you have to stop. And I go, no, but I just need to finish this scene or I need to finish this, this verse or whatever. And she'll say, yeah, but you know what's going to happen. And then I'll be like, oh, yes. So then I'll stop. And now I think that's important too. We have to know our triggers. And it's taken me years to realize and accept them, what my triggers are and what can get me out of it. And if the person who had asked that really excellent question, because somebody who is living with all those things and recognizes it and is acknowledges it and is prepared to ask questions about it, I think that person and all of whom go through similar things need to find formulas for themselves.
Absolutely. I have couple of questions for you, Owen.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to drinking, because you mentioned it earlier, do you
Mm-hmm.
refrain from alcohol now
Yes.
completely? Yeah, okay.
I wish I could say otherwise because I do enjoy having a beer, but I used to drink to help to get me through it. And now I abstain completely when I can feel it coming on.
Mm.
And so I, if I'm going through, if there's a project that I have to do, and I know this is going to be pretty intensive and intense, most likely over this next month, or like if I'm directing a film or whatever, I feel okay, I need to absolutely stop drinking alcohol. I need to have no alcohol. And I mean, not even like a glass of wine or a beer. I need to absolutely abstain. And so now I'll have, especially if I'm doing a gig, I do a lot of music gigs now. I like to have one drink after the gig. I don't drink before, but I like to have one after the show. And so I'm not a drinker, but I did drink to get me through depressions until I learned that it was actually putting me steps
Making
back.
them worse.
Oh, making them worse because in the
Yeah.
moment in the evening when I would go, okay, it's 5 o'clock, I can have a drink. I would think, oh well, that helped. That took the edge off, and so I'll have one more, and that'll take more of the edge off, and then I'll have another couple of drinks, and then I'll start to feel good, and I'll go, this is the solution. I'll go, oh my God, and I'll trick myself into thinking this was the right thing to do,
Yeah.
and then the next day I'll realize that I'll need the alcohol even more because I feel worse than I had the day before I drank, and then on it goes, and it's a vicious circle or cycle, as we say in this country. And so I have just learned to completely abstain, completely refrain from drinking. And now, I mean, I've just gone through the last couple of weeks of not feeling fantastic, but not being completely down. I've been able to do my stuff. I've been able to function, and I haven't drank. I had a non-alcoholic beer yesterday, and I thought, is this right? Why am I drinking a non-alcoholic beer? And then I go, because if I drink an alcoholic beer, even one, it can actually inhibit my recovery. And I feel like I'm actually, strangely now, we had planned to have this discussion. I think we first talked about having this about a month ago when I was feeling
When
great.
you were in Ireland, yeah.
I was in Ireland, yeah. But now I feel like the last week or two, and I think part of it is adjusting to being back
Mhm.
in America, back in this life, as opposed to that life where, I had a different community and different experiences. I think those kinds of things can also trigger certain feelings, which can contribute to a downhill slide if I'm not careful. And so I hope that maybe by this time next week, I will be able to have an alcoholic drink and not worry about it.
Okay, one more. Well, I have so many questions for you, but one right in front of my nose is how does exercise factor in? I'll just load you up with a couple questions. I'd like to know how exercise factors in. I'm also curious if you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert. And so those are two that are right here in
Mhm.
front.
Yeah, I would say, well, first of all, with the exercise, and I'm so glad you brought that up because it's so important. And that was one of the things when I said the gentleman who came in and that day and basically gave me a therapy session, even though he wasn't a professional and advised me on all these things and told me his story. One of the things that he said is it's very important to bring the heart rate up. So if you certainly exercise, a fast walk as fast as you can manage, because when you're in a depression, you can't move fast. I can't, at least. I have trouble lifting my foot off the pavement at times. And
Mm.
I'll stroll. And it's as much as I can manage to do. And people will see me and go, "Are you okay?" And I'll be like, "Well, no, not really." But they'll be asking, am I physically okay? Because it's almost like I'm not walking at a normal pace. I'm walking at a very slow pace. But physically, of course, I'm fine. But, it's all connected, right?
Of course.
And, and so I feel like exercise is very important. And at times that I'm out, cycling a bike, or when I lived by the beach, I used to rollerblade a lot. It was a thing that helped me control it. And what that gentleman had told me that day was that some people control their depression solely with exercise. They don't do anything else. They just run on the treadmill every day for 20 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever, getting the heart rate up, releases the endorphins, and that's how they control their depression.
Mm.
And I find if I've gone through a sedentary phase where I'm writing at the computer or not, and I'm not doing my exercise, that absolutely is a negative for the illness. Absolutely. And I feel like in Ireland, for example, I was getting around a lot by bicycle and I felt great. It was wonderful. And I was like, you know what? I got to get my bicycle happening here again and I have to exercise. And so I think that is, I think it's hugely important and it's the hardest thing to do when you're feeling really down, but you have to force yourself, or somebody who's close to somebody who has depression, to invite them to exercise, even just a little bit, out for a stroll or something. I think it's important. And I make a concerted effort, as hard as it is, every evening during those times. I'll go out, and even if I can't make it to the end of the street, which is only 3 blocks away, maybe I'll just do 1 block. At least it's something.
And that is amazing. And thank you for focusing on that piece where if a loved one, it's again, I'm really hearing so much
Mhm,
mindfulness
mhm,
and the importance of support of someone who
mhm,
doesn't judge you, but steps forward to invite you, to give
mhm,
a gentle suggestion, like and a block.
mhm.
That's good. It's out, it's wind, it's air, it's sometimes sunshine, whatever, whatever time of day, just getting out. I absolutely love that you honor the importance of any amount of exercise, but as much as you can to get your heart rate going up, to get the endorphins going, to give your brain that little surge of the little boost it needs to
Mhm.
help you. Thank you. Thank you. The other question is just out of curiosity,
Mhm.
introvert, extrovert.
I would say extrovert, but
Ah,
during those times, I'm completely the opposite, and I'm completely the introvert. I don't communicate with people other than texting maybe or sometimes on the phone, but I don't want to be around people. I wouldn't be able to go to a social function and feel like I could fit in. And people, I mean, I remember I went to my hairdresser once, which I don't go that often. Since COVID, it's a once a year thing. But but I remember going once and she said, I know you, Owen. I know you. This is not you. What happened? And I'm like, I didn't, first of all, didn't want to have the conversation. I thought that was one of the things that I can say I can do something that'll give me purpose. I can go get a haircut and all I have to do is sit there and get my haircut.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, she didn't understand what was going on and she kept prying and kept asking. And it was the hardest thing to just not be able to explain. Like if I said, oh, well, I'm going through depression. Why? What happened? What's wrong? Like nothing happened. You can't, but then why? How is it? And so it was a mistake actually engaging with somebody who's not a friend and who doesn't understand and who wanted to talk about stuff. In retrospect, I think that now, but it's certainly not a mistake to find something that you can handle on that day that'll give you purpose. So I'll do that even the days I don't feel like getting out of bed. If my bladder doesn't force me first to get out of bed, I'll force myself to get up and just do something. Even put on a slice of toast. Even if I don't feel like I can butter it, I can put it in the toaster, press the thing, sit down, and then when the toaster pops, I can try to motivate myself to stand up again before the toast gets cold. It doesn't always happen. But if you have someone in your life who's not judging you and who's prepared to butter the toast for you and bring it to you, that is such a gift. And who doesn't say, okay, the dishes need to be done. I've cooked all day for you. I've done this, I've done that. Why don't you do the dishes? Who doesn't do that? Who just goes, you need somebody to support you 100% now, and I'll be that person. And like I said, when I was in Ireland, I was living by myself, but my family, who have been educated over the years about such times, um, they brought me food. They didn't intrude. They didn't come in. They didn't force themselves in. They came to the door. They spoke to me for as long as I was able or willing to speak, which generally wasn't long, and said, we're all here for you. And yeah, it meant so much. And so living with a partner who understands is huge. It's huge. I mean, we're talking about love and relationships and all that. We each need somebody different in our life, right? Each person is going to be compatible with a completely different person than another person. And so the one thing in my relationship that really stood out at the beginning was when I went through a depression, she was there at the end of it. She didn't get scared off. And people get scared off. And so finding someone who didn't get scared off and who understands and who realizes that I haven't really got the energy or the motivation to do the dishes today, but I will be able to in a week or two or a month or whatever it is. Thankfully, my depressions tend not to last that long anymore. I'm so grateful for that, because I look back at when they would sometimes go for 2, 3, 4, or 5 months. Now it was just like, I mean, I would still have to function sometimes during those times, which I suppose would accentuate the whole thing, and it would make it drag on. And I think that's part of it too. If you have to get up and go to work and do something and you have to work through it, then you've taken a step back. And this is why I wouldn't be able to and wasn't able to really hold down a full-time job, because it would be just like, okay, I am mentally unable to do the task that's in front of me right now. Like I'm not able to do it. And so the fact that, and I guess going back to your question about the introvert or extrovert, People who know me as an extrovert don't usually see me when I'm being
As
introvert because I do that by design. I don't go. I don't mingle. I don't, see people who don't understand this. And I've learned to do that because I used to put on the brave face and I used to be somebody would say, "Oh, come on, it'll make you feel better. Oh, come on, it'll be fun. We'll have a drink. We'll see this person. They'll cheer you up." And then you go, and then you're not the person that they know because you
you
just
don't
don't,
have,
you don't have
you
it.
don't
Your
have it.
personality is like another personality. You can't laugh at their jokes. You can't make jokes. And then people start to worry about you and go, well, what is going on with you? And then they probe and they pry and what's wrong and have another drink. And then you peer pressure, you have another drink. Oh, yeah, that will make me feel better. And then, of course, and so I think a lot of maybe the prolonged depressions for me were that I didn't take care of myself. I worked through it. I did the things that I felt like I had to do, and I didn't make my mental health my priority. And getting through this time, I didn't make it a priority. Whereas now, as much as, of course, there are commitments and the things that I have to do, and I remember directing film through a depression, and I tell you, the fallout from that afterwards was several months. But I had to do what I had to do at the time, and I think, if we make it our first priority to get well, if somebody has COVID, their priority is to lock down for a week or 10 days or whatever. Um, and I think maybe this should be treated the same, is I do what I need to do to get healthy again, to feel better again, to get through this and, not infect others.
Oh,
Because
you're
I mean, if we feel we're infecting others, like, oh man, you're bringing me down because of, such and such, then that also brings us further down. And so I just go, and generally I tell people the truth now, not always. It's very hard, to admit it and to acknowledge it. But generally, I try to tell people the truth now. I just say, you know what, I'm feeling down. I'm going through a low phase. I can't do that right now, or I can't come to that gathering right now. And
and
usually more than historically in my life, people seem to understand now.
and good for you to, as I'm, on this journey listening to you, how it's so beautiful that you over time have become more aware of your needs. You've become more aware of what doesn't work for you, what does work for you, of even going into, as you said at the beginning, shutdown mode so you could have self-care, surrounding yourself with people who get you, who know not to force you, not to judge you, just to be there to support you in gentle, kind ways. And also, I love the piece, the story about the hairdresser. It's very poignant because she didn't, she may have been well meaning, but she didn't have good boundaries or sensitivity or empathy. And so we can, as listeners, come to a greater understanding from everything that you're offering, whether it's someone who's suffering from chronic depression, getting such great nuggets of self-care, or somebody who lives with someone or knows someone who suffers from chronic depression, about the exquisite sensitivity and hard work and balance that is required to make it through each episode, each unremitting episode, because there is no end in sight. You can only hope, as you say, that they get better, that they don't last months, that it's maybe weeks. And the other piece I really honor is that you've talked so openly about having been prescribed medication and yet not taking it and not judging that either way. But some people even believe, and I remember I was at a seminar on psychopharmaceuticals, and the lead presenter was saying, people think that taking an antidepressant is going to take 100-pound weight off their back. And so when it only makes that 100-pound weight into an 80-pound weight or a 70-pound weight, they
Mhm.
feel as though they're broken, or that it's that something wrong with them, when in
Mhm.
fact we can't. And especially, I'm really hearing it crystal clear from you today. We can't expect medication to, or anything to magically make mental health issues go away. We need to learn to talk about them and be with people with empathy and consideration and appreciation for their courage. Again, I go back to courage because I see it sitting here with you, that you do have such immense courage, because I can't even imagine going through depression for I'd probably waste away in a corner. I can't, I can't imagine it. So I'm so grateful. Owen, and one last piece, because you've talked about it a lot, but we've kind of been a side avenue. Love,
Mm-hmm.
the power of love. And I know your sweetheart is an incredible human being, and it sounds as if you have love
Mm-hmm.
in all corners of your life. Could you talk? We're such imperfect beings, and love, it's not, a magic bullet, but it surely, imperfect love can
Mm-hmm.
certainly go a long way to making life worth living.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about love, please?
Well, it's a wonderful thing, isn't it? I was one of those people who I thought that maybe I would never meet, the right person or whatever, because I would have relationships and they wouldn't work out. And I think part of it was basically I wasn't ready to be the person they wanted to be, or I couldn't be the person they wanted to be. Or I didn't feel like I was ready to commit. And, I had a bad, I suppose, having grown up and, with parents who, without going into the details there, I thought, why would anyone ever get married? Like they choose this? Like, I'm never done that. And so, and also, we get our heart broken as teenagers or whatever, which is, kind of what happened to me, the young love, and it doesn't work out. And um, some people say we never quite get over that. I hope we do. But I think it's really acceptance and being there for the other person. What I mentioned before about Jessica was, and I joke about this sometimes, that like how I used to get out of relationships was I'd be dating someone and then I'd go into a depression and they'd say, hey, well, what are you doing like on Saturday night? Do you want to go to a movie or something? And I said, well, no, I can't go because I'm not feeling well. Oh, what's wrong? Um, I suffer from depression and I feel it coming on right now. So I need to be alone. And that would be the end. They'd be gone.
Oh,
And I joke about it because sometimes it would work in my favor. And I'd be like, I don't really want to be in a relationship with this person. And then a depression would come on. And I go, all right, this is the answer. And I remember when I met Jessica, and I thought, well, I don't know how this is going to go. And neither of us thought it would really turn into a serious relationship. I mean, we didn't really verbalize that at the time, but months later we look back and just thought, I didn't really think this would become something, and it became something. And I think maybe the pressure and the expectations weren't there because we met each other through friends, we enjoyed each other's company, we had fun. I wasn't thinking in terms of a real relationship at that point, and neither was she. And through that, it kind of developed because there was no real expectations. We just learned that we liked each other's company. And when I did go through about a depression, and I told her, I said, look, I'm really not up to meeting today or tomorrow or this weekend or maybe for a couple of weeks. I don't really know. Um, she wasn't quite sure what to do. I remember she brought a plant like my door, which I think was so sweet. It was so sweet. But her mom actually was a therapist. And so she spoke to her mom, and her mom told her, this is, I think, if you like this guy, this is, I think, what you need to do is just allow him to be and this and that. And she had all, and Jessica went along with that. And at the other end of it, when we met up again, I kind of was stunned that she was so accepting. And that for me was the biggest thing in my life. First of all, I was always scared that I would meet somebody who would not acknowledge that I was an artist at heart. It's this, that's just what I do because it's who I am, and we can't choose not to be an artist if we're an artist.
Mhm.
That's really the thing. It's who we are. And I was talking to a songwriter friend of mine yesterday who was saying, I would die without music. If I didn't have music, I think I would just die. And I said, me too. And we didn't need to say anything more than that because we both understood that, like, if my dad was an artist at heart, and it's like breathing. We have to do what we do. We
Yes.
just have to. And I used to wish that it weren't so. I used to wish that I could just choose something else that was easier, and that would bring me just as much. I don't want to say joy because it doesn't always bring me joy. I don't always enjoy the process. I just know that I have to do it.
Mhm.
And I've accepted that. But my fear was getting into relation to somebody who didn't understand that, who didn't understand fundamentally what is fundamental about an artist that we have to create. And so she was someone who got that. I was in relationships with people who didn't get that. I mean, I remember going out with someone one time and telling her, I said, it's just a drive that I can't explain, and something in you needs to strive towards creating, the perfect joke as a comedian, or like the perfect song or the thing, and not that you'll ever create anything that's going to be perfect, but I'll never forget her reaction because it was physical. She just kind of got scared and she kind of leaned back and was like, I don't know, I think her eyes were as wide as that, but it was sort of like she
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
realized like I have no understanding of what this is, and like this guy should be out there trying to be a stockbroker or something, or like, and I was like, the money doesn't matter, it's not important, I put all this stuff in, and of course I have to make a living, but that's not why I do it. And I think for her, and maybe, we were pretty young, but maybe at the point where you're finding your life partner, and I think to her it was kind of like, it was such a shock of like, well, this guy seemed like a good bet. And now all of a sudden she just had no, she had some kind of a corporate job, she had no understanding of how that could be. And so the fact that I also met somebody, and there were other people I've met over the years who totally get it and totally understand, but the fact that I met somebody who, didn't judge my depression and totally understood 100% why I had to be an artist. Those two factors for me, I thought I would never find that person.
Mm.
I thought that's impossible for me. I'm not going to be able to find somebody who gets both, and who's not going to judge me for either. And that happened. And, of course, the other elements were there. Chemistry, obviously, she's very attractive to me. She's a wonderful person. Um, and I'm saying that because I think she came in and she's in the next room and she can probably hear me. Uh,
I can confirm she is beautiful, and she is a beautiful human being. So
she is, and
is.
so I'm very, very fortunate, and and I was in my late 30s when I met her. So prior to that, it hadn't happened for me, and so people say, "Oh my God, I'm 28, or I'm 32, or I'm 46, or whatever." It doesn't matter the age. You hear of people. I mean, I have a friend in Ireland, and he was 40 when he met his wife. And I said, "Oh, it's so great. You're such a great match." And he said, "Yeah, it took me a long time to find her." Um, and so, when they say that there is somebody out there for everyone, um, I didn't used to subscribe to that, and now I do. So, as cliche as it is, I think that as flawed as we are, and the concerns that we think that maybe are our weaknesses and the reason people won't want us, may be the very reason that the person wants us. Because
Absolutely.
yeah, because like she told me, she said, "Oh no, I couldn't be with a non-artist," and I was like, "What?" Well, I couldn't be with somebody who wasn't driven to be an artist. And I was like, oh my God, because I mean, getting back to, I mean, I touched on my parents' relationship before, and my dad was an artist. And I don't think my mom, as much as I love her, she's fantastic. Um, I don't think she ever really understood what that drive was. And I think
It's,
it caused
yes,
conflict, and also as did his depression. And then I realized, oh my God, like I'm my dad because I'm an artist and I suffer from depression. So like there's no hope. There's no hope anyone's going to put up with me. And so that certainly when the chips are down, as they say, when you're going through that place, if the person is there on the other end, you go, well, that's love, I think, you know.
absolutely. Love is action.
Yeah.
Love is what, the relationship, the back and forth, truly being there in sickness and health, better for worse, all of that, that is love in action. And you're so right about creativity that I feel like psychotherapy and writing, those are oxygen to me,
Mhm.
helping with the world. I couldn't, I mean, that's what I breathe. That's what, and for you, it sounds as if, and you are such a magnificent creator across so many realms. I am always, I know that I've had the joy and the pleasure of seeing your work in multiple realms. And it's amazing to me that you do all of those realms so well, so brilliantly well. And as we wind to a close, I could keep going for ages, but you've offered so much of your time, and I'm so grateful. Could you tell our listeners just a little bit, not only about where they can find you, but
Mhm.
if you don't mind, mentioning your book, just giving a blurb about that, and a couple of your movies. I'm a fan, so please, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and thank you. I do live performances, and I'm at a club in Pasadena near where I live, every Tuesday night from 8 to 11. So if anybody comes, I'm at the Speakeasy 1881 or the 1881 Club on Tuesday nights. The two films that I have out right now, the first one is called Choosing Signs, and it was filmed in my hometown in Cork, which is very picturesque. I must say, it's beautiful. And that is a dramedy, I suppose. It's like a drama, but it's got a lot of comedy in it. And people tend to really like the movie. I mean, I was actually so relieved when we did the premiere and people liked it. I had no idea because when you're going through it yourself and you're editing and this, are people going to like this? And that's available on multiple platforms. And then the next movie is a comedy. It's called The Holy Fail. And that's been out a couple of years. And you can also get that on Amazon and a bunch of other places.
I love it. It's a caper. It is so great.
Thank
Plus,
you.
your lovely significant other is in it, so
Yes.
it's especially magical.
Yes, and she's a wonderful actress. So
She is.
we couldn't have done it without her. I mean, she has a fantastic performance in both movies. And then we have another movie coming out called A Lesser Gift. And actually today, just before our conversation, I was finalizing a part of the post-production because I'm handing it over to the sound people that are going to do dialogue editing and all of that next week. And so that will be available hopefully early next year, I'm hoping, but it might be later in the year. And then I have a book that I wrote called White Horses in Irish Childhood. It's about my childhood.
Yes.
And I haven't put it out to the general public yet because, my mother, she's a very private person. It's a lot of our family details, etc. And so she told me, she said, I'm happy for you to publish this book as long as I'm dead or I have Alzheimer's. That was basically her thing. She's
Mm.
got a good sense of humor, my mom. And so for now, I sell that at my gigs. I sell it here in America to people who want to buy it directly from me. But I haven't put it out, properly yet. But one day, um, one day. And also I've written a couple of plays which I'm hoping to get produced. We'll see. Maybe in the coming years in Ireland because they're based in Ireland. They're set in Ireland, and I'm constantly making new music. I have music on Spotify and wherever else, Amazon Music, wherever you find music, and I have actually real CDs that I sell at my
Royal
gig.
CDs.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard to find somebody with a CD player, but occasionally someone will
Occasionally.
occasionally will come up and they'll want a hard copy, which is nice. Um, And I think, I'm doing a show tonight, actually, a variety show out in, is it La Crescenta? Uh, it's Vertigo. I'll have to look it up. It's near Glendale. Anyway, thank God for MapQuest, right?
Thanks,
Map
thanks.
on iPhone, right? I'd be
Yes,
lost otherwise.
absolutely.
But I'm doing some comedy at that, and I'm going to do a new song and premiering a song and doing some stand-up comedy. So I think I've covered it. That's pretty much it.
Well, thank you, Owen. And I can say your book is absolutely fantastic. So, if somebody wants to get their hands on a copy, could they email you?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
They can find me if they go to owendara.com, my website. There's a contact page and it has my email address. And
Okay.
so, absolutely, yes, they can get in touch with me via my website. So
Okay. And so, listeners, it's Owen Dara, Dara. So look for Owen. You can find his website and his amazing and plentiful work. And I can't wait for your I had a sneak peek at one of your plays and was stunned and touched, and it still lives in my heart. So I can't wait. Even if it's in Ireland, I'll have to find a way to somehow scoot over or take a
it'll
ship.
be an
Take a ship.
it'll, it'll be an excuse to go. Absolutely. Yes, we'd love to have you.
Well, thank you for your honesty, for sharing so much with me, with us, with helping to peel back some of the myths and misconceptions about chronic depression, about helping us really understand the power of boundaries, self-awareness, self-care, love, all of these beautiful parts of the package that make living with chronic depression possible, and not just living with it, but it might be too much to say, but it feels to me like you really thrive despite it.
I hope so. I hope so. And thank you so much, Dr. Carla. This has just been wonderful always to talk to you.
It's
Thank you.
always a blessing to connect. Thank you. Thank you, Owen. I'm so grateful. And you've been with Jessica 20, how many years now?
It's going on 20 this year.
20 years. And
20 in December, yeah.
a testament to the beauty of love, imperfect being. Blessings to you, my dear. I'm so grateful. Thanks again.
And to you, thank you.
Thank you. And this, listeners, is Imperfect Love.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Remember, you have the power to transform your life and love fearlessly, if imperfectly, and it's my privilege to help you along the way. You can find more life-changing content, including my books and other podcast episodes, at drcarlamanley.com. Feel free to submit your own confidential questions through my website. I'll do my very best to include your issue on a future episode. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Until we connect again, this is Dr. Carla Marie Manley wishing you oceans of blessings and love. Please note, this podcast is psychoeducational in nature and is not intended to replace formal mental health support. Please contact your healthcare provider or emergency hotline if you need psychiatric care. And as always, please take good care of your amazing, wonderful self.